Welcome to this explainer. Today we are doing something really fascinating. We're stepping directly into the mind of Chief Investigator Anthony Amore. For the past 2 decades, he has been on this absolutely relentless, high-stakes hunt for the greatest stolen treasures in art history. So we aren't just examining a 35-year-old cold case here. We are really experiencing it through the eyes of the man who literally made it his life's mission to solve it.
$500 million. Let that sink in for just a second. That staggering figure represents the estimated baseline value of 13 artworks stolen during the largest unsolved property crime in global history. And honestly, some experts even push that number closer to $1 billion. But if you ask the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum in Boston, the true cost goes way, way beyond any dollar amount.
For Amore, who is the museum security director and chief investigator, the empty frames left hanging on the museum walls aren't just, missing property. Because of the strict rules laid out by the museum's founder, those frames absolutely cannot be moved or filled with other art. They are these daily, visceral reminders of a completely devastating loss. Amore actually puts it perfectly. He says it's exactly like being a homicide detective and walking past the chalk outline of a body every single day.
And when you look at what was taken, the sheer magnitude of the loss is just mind-blowing. These aren't just famous paintings, they are the absolute heavy hitters of the art world. We're talking about Vermeer's The Concert, which is widely considered the most valuable unrecovered painting on Earth. We're talking about Rembrandt's only known seascape, which was violently cut right from its stretcher. But you might be wondering, why exactly do these empty frames have to stay permanently stuck on the walls?
Well, it comes down to this really fascinating legal concept that we can call the perpetuity puzzle. Isabella Stewart Gardner's will strictly stipulated that her art collection was to be kept for the public's education and enjoyment forever. If anything is ever moved, the entire collection legally defaults to Harvard College. Legally speaking, and this is a lot like the famous property law case Smedley v. City of Waldron, this was a private gift with strings attached, given strictly for public benefit. So those empty frames mean this art wasn't just stolen from a private institution, it was legally and fundamentally stolen from us.
Now, the 1990 heist itself was a total anomaly. It was the night after St. Patrick's Day, and 2 thieves, dressed up as Boston police officers, buzzed the museum intercom, claiming they were responding to a disturbance. The guards, who were pretty inexperienced, broke protocol and let them in. The thieves quickly bound them with duct tape down in the basement, and then the thieves spent an agonizingly long 81 minutes just wandering around the dark galleries, which really highlights how the Gardner thieves broke pretty much every rule of professional art theft. Your typical high-end heists, they're usually daytime smash and grabs that last maybe 2 to 3 minutes. But these guys, they took 81 minutes in the dark. They clumsily hacked priceless canvases out of their frames. They even completely ignored a Titian masterpiece worth well over $100 million just to steal a low-value eagle finial off a flack. These clearly weren't sophisticated connoisseurs. They were local criminals who just had a shocking amount of time to kill.
So to track these guys down, Anthony Amore knew he had to change tactics. Early on in his career, his mentor, who was this legendary Scotland Yard detective, taught him a really crucial lesson. He said, to find stolen art, you must be willing to walk into the gritty criminal underworld and speak to the devil. And growing up, right near organized crime figures in Rhode Island, Amore was uniquely equipped for exactly this. He simply isn't afraid of the bad guys. In fact, Amore routinely navigates this wild, colorful network of Boston mafia figures to gather his intel. He even forged this incredibly unlikely friendship with Miles Connor Jr., who is a master thief that famously stole a Rembrandt back in the 70s. Through these really deep underworld connections, Amore and the FBI zeroed in on a local gang tied to a Dorchester auto body shop and a sprawling web of mobsters that stretched all the way down to Connecticut.
All of this groundwork leads to one of the absolute strongest theories of the entire case, the Bobby Donati theory. Mobster Bobby Donati actually cased the Gardner Museum years prior. Then, in 1989, he visited his imprisoned boss and pitched a massive heist to use as leverage. Basically a literal get-out-of-jail-free card. Just months after the robbery, Donati allegedly confirmed he was the one who did it, but before he could ever negotiate, he was found brutally murdered in the trunk of his car, taking the location of that art straight to his grave.
Now, with prime suspects like Donati dead, the investigation obviously faces a massive hurdle. Amore is constantly bombarded with false tips from people claiming to have the paintings. Sometimes they demand money, sometimes they're just looking for attention. To cut through all that noise, Amore had to come up with a foolproof forensic trap.
And his trap is elegantly simple. Whenever someone claims they have a missing painting, Amore doesn't shut them down. Instead, he feigns total excitement.
He says, "Fantastic! Send me a photo of the back." You see, fraudsters might know what the front of a Rembrandt looks like from a textbook, but they have absolutely no idea what specific historical stamps and inventory labels are hidden on the back of the Gardner's canvases. The result? They almost always send back these comical, hand-painted fakes, completely exposing themselves right then and there.
But this brings us to a pretty harsh reality about stolen masterpieces. They are virtually impossible to actually sell. Because buying recognizable stolen art is a major criminal act, the demand just vanishes. So a $500 million Vermeer is essentially worthless on the black market. Because of this, both Amore and the FBI believe the investigation has shifted into what they call a generational waiting game. The original thieves are probably dead, and the art is likely sitting in an attic or a storage unit somewhere, just waiting to be discovered by a relative.
To make sure that whoever eventually finds it does the right thing, the museum put up a record-breaking $10 million reward. It is the largest reward ever offered by a private institution. They are banking on this life-changing sum to tempt the next generation. They're hoping someone who might unknowingly inherit a dusty old painting will break the silence, claim the cash, and finally return the masterpieces.
You really have to wonder how, despite decades of dead ends, empty search warrants, and deceased suspects, Anthony Amore refuses to give up. Well, he actually draws profound personal inspiration from Rembrandt's Stolen Seascape, which depicts Christ and the apostles battling a terrifying wave. For Amore, it's a story about maintaining faith in the darkest of times. As he puts it, to do this job, you absolutely have to operate in the realm of hope.
And there's just this wonderfully poetic detail to all of this. Anthony Amore, who is a devout Catholic and has dedicated his entire life to tracking down these missing masterpieces, actually shares his name with St. Anthony, the patron saint of lost things. He fully envisions the day he is going to personally carry those canvases back through the doors of the museum.
Because remember, this art legally belongs to the public. It belongs to you, and it belongs to me. So I want to leave you with this final thought. As this generational waiting game continues, the solution might literally be collecting dust in a forgotten box somewhere. What would you do if you were cleaning out an older relative's home and you uncovered the world's greatest unsolved mystery sitting right in your own attic? Would you make the call?